Hi, gang. I'm here with Rob Luna, my friend Rob. Good to see you, Rob. You've been a
Good to
busy
see
guy
you, John.
today. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, man. I'm being interviewed by somebody that's smarter than me, though, so I'm a little intimidated.
I doubt that. Yeah, it's been what, 2 months since we had dinner in Beverly Hills with you and Sabina. What's been
Yeah, that
happening in those 2 months?
well, a lot, man. Launching two new businesses, actually three new businesses. I got LOIs today on one of them, expecting another one
Awesome.
tomorrow. So
Hmm.
just like you, I love entrepreneurism, passionate about it, and so just
Yeah.
just building businesses.
Yeah, I've been building businesses, it seems like my whole life. I mean, how did you get kind of into the space? What was it that drove you towards entrepreneurship?
Well, it was baseball cards, which
Really?
actually
I
yeah,
collected baseball cards.
did you really? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the
So
days
yeah.
of Ron Say and Steve Garvey, that's dating me now, but I was a
Well,
Dodger fan.
I actually have a Steve Garvey rated,
Oh
it's
man,
mid-rated rookie,
no
which is
kidding.
if you know anything about the 1970s tops, his rookie card, it's black. So to find that
Wow.
without dinged up edges is very difficult. So I know all about that
Yeah, I had a Hank Aaron card the year he got the home run record.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
had all these cards, and I went abroad for a time, and I came home and I found out my mom sold them all in a garage sale. I couldn't believe it. I was like,
that,
"What are you
that's
thinking?" Some guy made bank that day.
that's a popular story. That my mom sold them in the garage sale. A lot of
Oh
people
man,
just millions
well,
in
it
garage.
truly happened to me. I was like, "Mom, what happened to my cards?" Yeah,
Yeah.
I think for me it was more about I was mowing lawns and throwing newspapers. That really dates me. But I just loved being kind of my own boss. But did you actually even make any money trading cards?
Yeah, so I actually started my first corporation at 16. It was
No
called
kidding.
Sports Card City. Yeah, and I was doing out here in Southern California local card shows where I was
Yeah,
actually buying from people that were coming,
yeah.
reselling. I think I made about 15,000 in profit my first year at 16.
Man,
So
that's pretty
not
good for a
not too
16-year-old. I needed
bad.
to hang around you. I'd be like, I'll give you 16 Mariner cards for one of anything else. That was before the Mariners started to improve.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Good team
yeah,
now.
it's funny. My brother-in-law actually has a whole bunch. I'm pretty sure he still has them of these whole cases that are still sealed.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
wonder what those things are even worth today. He's never even opened them. It's
Yeah,
got to
a
be
lot
worth
of
a
money. And
ton.
that's, today with, I mean, I think we're seeing this with a lot of the alternative asset classes, NFTs and things.
Hmm.
The sports card industry in general has been absolutely on fire. A guy
Yeah,
named Aaron Flashman is kind of trying to start a scalable sports card business right now, but they're doing millions of dollars in
yeah.
revenue. People are looking for those tangible assets now.
Yeah, years ago when I was in LA, I had a few celebrities that were athletes, and boy, it just amazed me what these guys would make off their card
Oh,
sales.
yeah,
Just the
a lot of
royalties alone
money.
was a big business for a lot of them. So I'm
Yeah.
glad they're able to do something that way because some of them are just absolutely. I mean, you work with a number of athletes. Some of them are just class acts. I mean, you see the obvious bad boys in athletics, but there's some really good people, and
Yeah.
I've actually been impressed with how strong some of them are as business people. So,
Yeah, I know a
um,
lot of them get a bad rap, but we work with a lot of
mhm,
athletes who've turned entrepreneurs, extremely successful. Definitely not the stereotype
yeah,
that a lot of people hear about.
right, no question. So that's a great segue. You're talking about NFTs. What have you seen in that space these days? That's kind of a fun, emerging. Man, it's kind of the Wild West still, I think. But
Yeah, no, it's absolutely the Wild West. But I think as you know, and I've been around doing this for quite a while. Also, the greatest opportunity is usually in the areas that people don't understand. They're
right,
hard to access. They're a little bit
yeah,
complicated. Once what I've been kind of talking to people about blockchain in general, which
hmm,
NFTs and everything are being delivered upon. It's kind of like if I told you in 1990 about Google, and I
believe
just
me,
described it to you about what it was going to be and how
yeah,
you're going to be able to stop going to the library for your research papers, and you're going to have all this information that you can get within a few seconds. It wasn't until Google created that
hmm,
cool little search box where you
yeah,
could just type things in and all of that complex data was simplified. That's when people started to get it. But the time
yeah,
to invest was back in
Right.
1990 when nobody really could understand it. And
Yeah.
so that's what's happening today. The challenge is obviously there's going to be, just like we saw at the internet,
Hmm.
big winners, big
Right.
losers, but it's an area you should probably be thinking about doing something in right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've been, just doing a lot with guys in the crypto space, NFTs. I mean, everything on the blockchain, because in my estimation, it's a lot like, the internet of the early days. Like you mentioned, Google, sadly, I actually have a Google story. I saw Google when it was literally kind of almost in stealth still. And I went,
Wow.
big deal, it's another Yahoo.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
they
yeah.
and then they came out with AdWords. And I went,
Right.
brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant, pay per click. And
exactly.
the rest was history. They were a multi-billion-dollar company overnight.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
rest is history. And it's fascinating too, because I even remember Microsoft and thinking, what a stupid investment. They never paid dividends. It's a growth stock, big deal. And I literally had friends around me living in Bellevue, Washington, who started at Microsoft and retired in the time
yeah.
I
Oh,
was
yeah.
in Bellevue,
Yeah, there's a
just
lot of
from their
millionaires
options. Hmm.
made from the ground floor over there. Jay,
Yeah.
you hear the story about some of the janitors that were made millionaires through stock options.
One time I remember, and this was many years ago actually, there were over 4,000 millionaires, and now I'm sure that's probably at least tripled
Oh
off of
yeah,
just the employee base. Easy, easy.
easily. Yeah.
So where do you see the biggest wealth creation coming now as we're, you know, turning the corner on this, new decade? We're coming out of COVID. Where do you see wealth creation happening now?
I think it's tough. One thing, I think, I have an academy where I teach young
Yeah.
entrepreneurs how to, build generational wealth. And, one thing, most of the people that I work with, quite honestly, John, they don't come from a lot of money like myself. They're
Mhm.
first generation
Right.
wealth. They made everything that they had by themselves. And so in dealing and working with a lot of those people similar to myself, I get asked a lot this question of what do I invest
Hmm.
in order to become wealthy? And, I really don't have a good answer for that
Hmm.
because, I've made some great investments in private
Hmm.
equity. I made some
Yeah.
great investments in publicly traded stocks and real estate.
Hmm.
But by far, and I think you'll probably attest to this in what you do and the people you work
Hmm.
with, hands down, the greatest investment I ever made was starting my own business 18 years ago. The
I.
multiple I got when I sold some of that last year to a publicly traded
Hmm.
company was much higher. I still own a lot of that.
Yeah.
The cash flow that I got off of that in terms of, IRR, that couldn't have
Hmm.
come from any other business. So I
Yeah.
tell people today, the greatest investment, first of all, is in yourself
Hmm.
because you can't start a
Right.
business. You
Right.
can't have a unique value proposition without being educated and being better at least at one thing than anybody else in the world. So
Hmm.
start there
Yeah.
investing in yourself. And then when you are at that point and you have real valuable value that you're able to deliver, you then need to really start about thinking about how do I build my own business and monetize that.
Hmm.
From there, that excess cash flow that you start to build, that's what you start to take and peel that off and invest in stocks and real estate and
Yeah.
crypto, and fine art. That's the way you build wealth. You're not going to start out
Hmm.
with 10 grand, invest it, and become a
Right.
multimillionaire over time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I was earlier today. I was working on one of our clients. We have two restaurants. They're actually part of the same group that are clients. We just don't handle many restaurants. It's not a
Yeah,
space for us, and usually thin margins. But
yeah,
these people, I like their food a lot, and I visit a lot because I think they have great food, and we were just running some quick valuation numbers on them. We realized that in the last 3 years, they've started this business and created about 1.8 to 2.2 million dollars of wealth. Where can you do that? You can't start as with 10 grand and throw it all on, options or something. I mean, you
right, right,
could, but the
right, right.
likelihood of doing that is so remote compared to starting your own business and doing
Agree.
that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you said, they started with probably next same thing. I started my business actually with debt, with credit card
Right.
debt, like
Hmm.
10,000, no
Yeah.
capital down, and then to sell that for multi-millions is you can't do that anywhere else.
Well, and I've started 4 businesses now in the last 6 years. The main one is our accounting firm, and I intentionally started it with $100, just to prove you could do it. And I
Right.
didn't put any more capital in it than that $100. I literally made it work, and there were times when we did that. And, as you know, there are times when the owner doesn't get paid and everybody else does. And we went through a few rough months in the early on. Now we bill sometimes more in a month than we billed in a year,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
crazy the kind of, self-fulfillment you can realize as well as wealth creation just through owning your own business. And I agree with you. It almost doesn't matter. I mean, I think a lot of people think, well, I got to get into fintech or crypto or the latest. But like I said, I was looking at somebody today that was a restaurant owner, and she's created almost $2 million in wealth just in the last 3 years.
Oh yeah, in our private wealth management, the vast majority of the clients my personal group works with have about 20 to 25 million in investable assets, and those people got there from pest control companies,
Isn't that
carpet cleaning
interesting?
companies, construction companies. It's just really, like you said, it's pallet. One of my clients sold over $100 million pallets. Is number
I have a
one customer.
pallet company as a client. Yeah, they're cash machines.
Yeah, it does not have to be something cool. It just
Right.
has to be something that people want, and you know how to build and scale. I mean, that's
Well,
the
I'm
key to it.
I'm sure you've had this experience because both of us have worked for some really prominent firms in
Yeah,
our life. I worked at PwC for many years, and I realized at Price Waterhouse I was in the wrong business
yeah,
when, as a light staff, I was assigned to work on a company, and these guys were killing it. They were making more money than sin. They were printing money, and
yeah,
they were doing fake fingernails. I thought,
yeah, yeah. No, it's crazy.
fake fingernails, and that does it. I
But they were
realized
doing
I
it
went
well.
and I just blew 7 years of school and learned how to do all these complex calculations, and ratio analysis and everything. And I'm sitting here helping guys that are making a killing off fake fingernails.
Yeah.
Have you seen things like that in your practice?
Well, I haven't seen fake fingernails.
Yeah,
That's a new
yeah, it's
one
a
to me.
new
But
one.
yeah, but to that point, yeah, like I said, pallets, pest control companies, people that sold for 25, $30 million. I have a friend who started a home health care company, basically helping parents train children with autism to not have
Oh
to have
wow,
them institutionalized, sold for well over $100 million. So there's a lot of people out
wow,
there that are, just like I said, it really starts with a
yeah.
core competency that you go
Mhm.
all in on. But to that point, John, I mean, the tough thing, as you know, I know about entrepreneurism, there's not really a class per se for that. You don't
No.
learn what it takes on how to do that. So a lot of people, including myself, who start out as entrepreneurs, struggle quite a bit.
Hmm.
A lot of them, unfortunately, quit
Hmm.
too soon. And that's
Yeah,
what people like you and I try to do with things like this: is
yeah.
educate people, give them frameworks and
Hmm.
the ability to get out there and succeed, because it's not easy. Our
Yeah,
society is not set up for entrepreneurs. It's
yeah.
set up for people to go to school like
And
you
get
and
a
I did,
job.
get a
Yeah.
job, stay there, and people tell you you're crazy, and you have to be a little crazy to be a successful
I
entrepreneur.
think my in-laws didn't know what to do with their son-in-law for a long time because he was just off, building companies. You know, it's interesting you say that because I actually did a lot of research on entrepreneurship in college, and I determined, like you said, you can't teach it, but
Yeah,
you can give perspective, you can
right.
coach. And I would like to ask you a little bit about what you're doing with Wealth Academy because I know you're doing some really cool stuff. But I'll give you an example in my life. I was told, well, the first thing you have to do is a business plan. And all a business plan ever did for me was waste a month of my life and all the cash flow. And I tell
Yeah.
people, if you got a business idea, build a marketing plan and a budget. You can do that in a day and get rolling
Hmm.
because that business
Hmm.
plan is going to change. But
Yeah.
tell me about Wealth Academy and some of the guidance you give entrepreneurs through your program.
Yeah, so I mean, the concept of Wealth Academy is twofold. Number one, like I said, the vast majority of my career up until January of last year was spent really focused on the high net worth, and really a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people
Mm-hmm.
define it ultra high net worth, $20 million above in investable assets, and doing multifamily office type of structures for them. And so I
Mm-hmm.
spent vast majority of my career there building a business dedicated to that space. That's the business that I sold the vast majority of interest to. And then, I think we have a mutual friend, Albert Preciado,
Yep.
who is big on social media. He's built a very successful couple businesses through
Mm-hmm.
social media. I wasn't on Instagram. I mean, maybe I
Right.
had an account for my daughter last year or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But he asked me to go and speak at his Driven event,
Right.
and went out there, spoke, and at the end, I had a line of people like I said, just like
Yeah.
myself, who started at the bottom, who had a lot of questions, good
Right.
questions that,
Hmm.
unfortunately, if social media is your only educational platform to be educated from, especially when it comes to personal wealth, you
Yeah.
get a lot of bad answers. And so
Right.
that, when I say you got to build a business, you have to have a need, obviously, and you need
Yeah.
to have a problem to solve. And so what I realized is financial literacy, literacy in terms of being an entrepreneur, are not that accessible to people who are just starting out. Like for
Yeah.
me, unfortunately, it got to where the minimum is okay, unless you have 20, maybe 15 million in investable assets,
Hmm.
because of where we're at and our limitation on time, we can't talk to you. And so what you find is the vast majority of people that are willing to talk to people that are just starting out, unfortunately, are selling high commission based products. They don't have the best intentions for
Hmm.
these people. And these people, for lack of a better
Right.
word, wind up getting screwed. And so I saw that as an opportunity to how do we teach what we're doing. COVID actually inspired it all, also
Hmm.
in a sense of just like what you and I are doing right now. I could communicate through Zoom to people without having to travel, and I'm able to
Hmm.
scale my time, which
Yeah.
obviously, I bill 2,000, 3,000 an hour depending on what I'm doing. Most people can't afford that, but they can afford $100 a month to
Right.
come in and get educated. So I decided
Yeah.
essentially to create a platform where I put courses in there every week, just
Hmm.
like this. I do live Zooms.
Hmm.
One's called the CEO Lab, where
Yeah.
we teach people how to build and scale a business.
Yeah.
One's called the Wealth Lab, where everything on personal finance. But the key is really is these weekly Zooms where I get on there just like today, and I talked about why did I buy Clorox today. Obviously, I'm not recommending stocks to anybody, but hey, the
Hmm.
stock took a 12% dip. Here's where I bought it. So the thought
Hmm.
process of what am I doing with my money? What is somebody who's a money
Hmm.
manager for hundreds
Yeah.
of millions of dollars personally that he controls
Yeah.
on a daily basis doing? We're
Hmm.
teaching them weekly in real time. Interest rates just
Hmm.
dropped to 1.15%. What does that mean for mortgages? What should you be doing on your business
Right.
debt? That has to be in real time. I
Yeah.
have the library of courses, but for people to really get the value for me to do it, I wanted to be able to interact with them in real time. And the great thing about COVID, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
is it made this just so acceptable. The
Right.
technology is so great that it's allowed me to give
Yeah.
access to people of what I believe is high quality information for myself, other
Hmm.
professionals, CPAs,
Hmm.
CFPs, CFAs, that they wouldn't necessarily have access to without technology today.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. In fact, we're even building a site kind of like what you're doing with a different slant, of course, but I think this one to many with, kind of an expert type academy is a powerful model because, it's kind of what I brought into private tax solutions, having been a director at PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Right.
I know that there's not a lot of people that can afford that kind of, advice. I mean, my billing rate a long time ago at PwC was over 600 an hour,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now it would be pushing probably $1,500,
Right.
$2,000 an hour.
Right.
And, I could hardly justify going to the water fountain or the bathroom. And they
You're
didn't
right.
want you doing that too often either. They wanted you kicking out billable hours. But I think this model of, being able to provide good guidance to people and helping them get out of the gate, build wealth, do something, that is really beyond them. Because I'm kind of like you. I came, from kind of an impoverished background. I had more ganas than sense. And I knew I could do something if I gained an education. I just always equated that with a college education,
Right. 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 Right.
and you
Right.
mentioned Albert, our good friend, which I'll just put a plug in for. We met, I think, at Driven for the
Yeah.
first time, and I was like you. Everybody came up to me after I spoke and said, what's your Instagram profile? Where are you
Yeah.
at? I had one, but I wasn't managing it. So we're working on changing that. We're focusing mostly on YouTube and Instagram now, where we used to focus more on Facebook. But I think it's just such a powerful platform to share with people and give them real value without them even paying a dime to you. And
Yeah.
that's what brings me reward, is knowing I've helped somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'd say that's the great thing, right, about this is what I tried to do. Obviously, from where I come from, $99 is very affordable, but for everybody,
Yeah.
that's not the case. So I even do a show 15, 20 minutes every week on my YouTube channel so people could access that for free, where I put out good quality information. So I wanted to give people from zero to affordable levels access to good information. And that's what's great about technology.
Yeah.
To your point, one thing I'll say is, I'm somebody with 4 college degrees. I'm an alumnus of Wharton. I'm alumnus of
Mhm.
UCLA Anderson,
Great
NUS,
schools.
Arizona
Yeah.
State. So I obviously, went to some really good schools, business
Hmm.
schools. But what I could tell you as somebody who still consults, especially on the executive education level with many of these schools, is that the traditional education system is broken. It's not fast
No
enough. It's not
question.
affordable enough.
It's not
It's not
changing.
real time. It's changing. So like
Yeah.
what
But
you
it's
and
not
I are
changing
doing,
fast enough, right? I mean,
it's not changing.
and
No,
the professors, a lot of them don't even have real world experience.
no, no,
They
no,
went
no.
on and they got their doctorate, and now they actually have to leave education for a time, get some practical experience, and come back. Is what we're
Well,
finding.
I think that's the most important thing. I could tell you the best professor I had was my economics professor at the National University of Singapore. Why? He
Interesting.
worked for Goldman Sachs. He made personally $10 million shorting the Thai baht in 1998. He sat on the San Francisco Fed. Like these are guys who are real
Wow.
men who
Impressive.
made real money. Those are the
Yeah.
people you want to learn from. You don't want to learn from the guy who read about business or
Right.
read about economics or read about marketing. I want
Yeah.
to talk to the guy like Albert who's
Right.
making a lot of money through social media. Like I'll tell
And
you, it's funny.
Albert's a self-made individual too. I mean, Albert has learned from good and bad experiences, and
Right.
I got to tell you, I have a master's degree too.
Yeah.
But have I learned something from Albert? Has that relationship been valuable to me? Absolutely. I
Of
mean,
course.
Albert has a ton of value from just what he's learned through marketing.
Yep.
And somebody could sit and follow Albert all day and just see what he does and gain tremendous value. So, the plug for Albert's Driven event in September, I think both of us are going to be there. But
Yep. Yep.
I highly recommend it if you haven't registered for it. It'll be a great experience, and I have to say, just knowing Rob and what he's done, this Wealth Academy can help anyone get out of the gate, whether they're just going to invest in homes or actually start a business or invest in the market. It's a great opportunity for you. So
Yeah.
I got a question for you. If you were doing it all over again, rewind
Yeah.
20, 30 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
what would you do different aside from buying Bitcoin in 2006?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I asked that of somebody and they said, I'd buy Bitcoin. I'd buy a whole bunch of it. Of course, all of us would. But I mean, with
Of course.
practical application, what would you do different having done it?
Yeah, the famous hindsight 2020 question, right? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think, I'll tell you from, again, because really I think the greatest value that I add through this
Hmm.
conversation is, what to do for entrepreneurs. And so when I
Right.
look at, how I made the vast majority of my wealth is through building a business. And so when I look at,
Mhm.
the first, actually second partial exit that I had last year, yeah, it was several millions of dollars, but it should have been probably about 30 to 40 million dollars
Yeah.
more, to be honest with you. And so, one thing I would say is, and what I'm trying to do in my academy is that when I built my business, John, it was essentially this. I left a firm that I was working for.
Mhm.
It's kind of like the carpenter syndrome, right? When he works for a general contractor, he's a good carpenter, he's a good cabinet builder, but he looks at the guy
Exactly.
and says, well, I can do this
Right.
myself. And realizes very quickly, maybe what he's done is bought himself a job. He gets enough
That's right.
cabinet work to have a job, but he doesn't create enterprise value.
Right.
And that's ultimately for the
Yeah.
first 10 years of my business. And it's
Mhm.
crazy to say this because,
Yeah.
I was in my early 30s making $1 million a year, but I was
Yeah.
capped there, right?
Right.
And I knew without me, if
Mhm.
I got hit by a bus, that business was worth zero.
Mhm.
It was very, very hard to grow. And that's why I went back in my 30s to do my MBA in an executive
Yeah.
format, because I heard a lot about scalability, building and growing a business, creating
Mhm.
enterprise value, but I didn't really understand what that meant. And so that's why I took this 2 year journey to really understand. And it's different when you go back to school in actual business,
Yeah.
because now you're taking notes and you're applying it right away. You're going back months and you're executing. And it cost me 200 grand for my MBA. That was a lot of money that I wanted to get something out of it. And so I really learned what building and scalable business is in terms of how you hire people, not hiring the cheapest person, hiring the
Exactly.
person who has value and can allow you to do other things, the technology investments that you make in your company, how important those are. And so what I realized when I sold was, and a lot of the reason I did sell, is I realized to take that business to the next level really required a bigger company. I didn't set it up to be a multi-billion dollar company. And so what I could tell you now is I was telling you, I just started 3 new businesses. Two of them, I'm kind of talking to you about some of them. One of
Yeah.
them doesn't even have a dollar yet in
Right.
earnings. I'm getting
It
an
will.
LOI
It will.
several millions of dollars for this
Yeah.
that people are investing in,
Right.
because now it's 2 things. It's number one, I don't have a business plan per se, but I know I have market experience. I have exactly what we need to do to scale. So I have a framework. I don't believe in
Right.
plans. I believe in frameworks in
Yeah.
which to evaluate decisions, because you're always pivoting and adapting. And then also what I have today is, I said, number one, invest in yourself. I have experience of execution. So when
Yeah.
I go to somebody today with a roadmap and I say, I'm going to be tied to this, they want to put money at that because ideas are out there. They're flowing all over the place.
Yeah.
But finding good people with the ability,
Exactly.
education, and experience to execute is
Yeah.
very difficult.
Ideas
So
are a dime a dozen. It's all about
I'm
execution. It's about the
a
horses, as we say, not,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's
so from
great.
that point, I guess I would have learned what I learned a lot sooner and created that business on a
Hmm.
more sustainable foundation. But hey, that's the way it works sometimes, and that's why
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs have 5, 6, 7 businesses before they get
I
it
think
right.
that's very similar to my story. I would just have done it sooner. If you've got
Yeah.
anything in you that says this is what I want to do it, and do it sooner.
Right.
And the reality is you're going to have financial challenges through the early days. I mean, I'm sure you
For
did.
sure.
I know I did.
Absolutely. Yep.
But that's what actually made me better as an entrepreneur. I talk about the science of entrepreneurship and the art of entrepreneurship. The science is what we learned in our master's degrees, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All the
Yeah. Yeah.
ROIs, how to calculate net income, what's EBITDA, and all these stupid
Yeah.
things. Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
saying they're totally out the window,
Right. Right.
but the art of entrepreneurship is how do you make payroll on Friday when you got $100 in the bank account, right?
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and that's what I see entrepreneurs do every day. In fact, some of the best ones are the guys that just keep doing it over and over and over. And they have this high belief system. They have this mindset, this attitude about them, and you just know they're going to win. I can almost tell
Yeah.
who they are when they come into my office or I do a Zoom meeting with somebody. I go, this guy's going to go places.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
willing
Yeah.
to bet on that guy. So, and I guess speaking of that, what do you typically like to see in a entrepreneur? I mean, you obviously, I know you do because we talk a lot, but what do you see are the best attributes for an individual that's starting a business?
I mean, I think first of all is that expertise, right? I talk about 3 things, right? I talk about
Okay.
expertise, I talk about entertainment value, and I talk about exclusivity. And so
Yeah.
what I mean by that is first somebody who's really an expert. So we're blockchain or whatever it is, NFTs. Like, who is the guy when you talk to them? It's more than cursory knowledge. It's more than knowledge I could just get from Google, where this guy is
Right.
educating me, telling me things, and I understand that this is a guy. When you talk about betting on a jockey, this guy is going to
Yeah.
ride this horse because he knows it. So I want expertise in the form of education and experience, right?
Yep.
And then when I say the second E being entertainment is that I want somebody who. Are you there, John?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I think something happened. There we
Yeah,
go.
you're back. You're back.
Corey fixed
Okay.
it. Yep.
So
Go
the
for
next
it.
thing is entertainment value. So in terms of entertainment value, is this somebody who can sell? So to your
Right.
point, believing in yourself, can you sell yourself? Can you get up in front of investors and present an idea that inspires and motivates people externally, but internally, can you motivate a team? Can you articulate a vision and mission that people are going to get behind? I have
Right.
people in 2 of my businesses now working for free because they know that
They've
eventually
got the
this is going to
vision.
be worth something and they want a part of it. That's number
Yep.
3. And then that exclusivity, are you going to be able to build through your expertise, entertainment value, something exclusive, proprietary that people
Yeah.
really want, and you stand out above the crowd? So that's kind of what I look for. But to your
Yeah.
point, it is somewhat of a sixth sense and an
Yeah.
art where sometimes I just know within a minute that this guy
Can't you
doesn't have.
though? Usually within a few minutes, I know whether
Yeah.
somebody's going to make it or not,
Yeah.
and I see, like we said, a confidence, an attitude, a mindset is really important. but also being teachable. So there's kind of a balance.
Yeah,
It's not just hardcore. They're willing to
sure.
say, okay, I'll take good feedback and good counsel, and I'll run with that. I'm willing to listen. If they're not willing to listen, I just pitch them to the corner and move on. I may not
Yeah.
even tell them, but
No,
if they're not going to listen, what's the point?
no, that's,
So,
I mean, humility is a great point. I mean, they have to be, because at the end of the day, why I wanted to build this business outside of
yeah.
myself
Hmm.
was I was the smartest guy in the room there for a
Hmm.
while. And
Yeah.
that's never, when you find yourself the smartest guy in the room in all aspects of your business, that's a problem, right? Now I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by guys that are smarter than me. And as soon as I started doing that and getting out of their way, that's when I started to exceed. And I started realizing the value of other
Hmm.
people. So being an asshole, excuse my language,
Hmm.
but telling people that you're the best this and not listening and taking
Right.
feedback, you're never gonna, because the
Hmm.
toughest thing,
Hmm.
if you would narrow it down to one
Yeah.
thing for people to succeed, is their
Yeah.
ability to attract and maintain talent. If
That's
they
right.
don't have the people that are going to get them there, everything else goes out the window because you can't do
Yep.
it by yourself.
And that talent comes not just from your employees, but from your clients. Because I look at our clients as have to be talented. We have a profile that we want our clients to be. Good
Right.
client, good business, really. So I agree.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. Um, so I have an unusual question because I have this
Yep.
balance of things that I invest in. I invest in real estate. I invest in crypto. I haven't
Yep.
invested in NFTs. I
Okay.
invest a little in art. I don't
Yep.
have your Ferrari, but I think I'd enjoy that a lot. um, Albert loaned me his Rolls Royce, and my wife was too scared to drive it. And
Yeah, it's like it's the price of a car. You don't want to get
right,
it. I mean,
right.
the price of a house.
Price of
You
a
don't want to
house,
get it.
exactly. Yeah, we live in a 4,000 square foot custom built, vaulted ceilings, crown molding, natural stone inside and out, and his car costs more than our house.
Yeah, it's
And we're near
outrageous.
West Yellowstone, so you just picture that. But cars, art, traditional financial investments. When you're talking to a client, and I know you're diversified now more than just RIA, but where
Yeah.
does that kind of fit in the scheme of investments, and what do you like? I mean, do you like art? Do you like I know you like Ferraris, but
Yeah.
what do you like to see in a person's portfolio aside from maybe the financial investments, and why?
Yeah, what I would say, John, I was just actually talking about this on my academy today. It
Mhm.
really depends on the person,
Yeah.
number one. And for us, which is a little bit different, is it all starts with the plan.
Yeah.
So we build out a plan, and so a lot of traditional financial planners have a model, right? So they have a
Hmm.
60-40 or 80-20 stocks
Yeah.
and bonds, whatever it is.
Right.
And they basically give you that model and they say, here's what this model could do, work your
Right.
lifestyle around it. Well, that's kind of like a job, right? When you go to a job and they say, we're going to give you 100 grand a year, you
Right.
build your lifestyle around that. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want the portfolio to
Yeah.
dictate how I live my life. Same thing
Right.
for my clients, and why most clients that come to me are entrepreneurs, because they don't believe in the traditional financial system. We
Hmm.
do planning for them that's cash flow based. So I want to know for the
Cool.
next 3 to 5 years,
I love
what
it.
do your cash flows look like? Once I
Hmm.
understand the cash flows, and this is called liability driven investing.
Hmm.
You see pension funds usually do this. Once you
Hmm.
understand the liabilities, which is your mortgage payments, that wedding for your daughter
Hmm.
that you have in 4 years, once I
Hmm.
understand all that, I then create a portfolio that has the asset classes that are consistent with meeting those objectives.
Cool.
So that's kind of where I start, and we customize everything to where
Hmm.
I use everything. Yeah, if you need money in 6 months, guess what? It's
Yeah.
going to be in a T-bill. You're not going to get a
Right.
high rate of return, but I'm
Right.
not I'm not betting that Microsoft is going to do well, or that this
Right.
or Bitcoin is going to bounce in 6 months. You
Yeah.
can't do that, right?
Right.
So it's really first that I tell everyone, figure out what you're trying to do. And that's the problem, John, is that a lot of people think they have an investment
Hmm.
portfolio, but what
Yeah.
they have is a bunch of random stuff. People
Hmm.
sold them or they bought, and
Hmm.
there's no common theme of what they're trying
Right.
to achieve. When you get that theme, it's then easier to build in assets around that. So, for example, to your point, your question is, once I understand what somebody needs, even if you're 60 years old, you're getting
Hmm.
ready to retire, a lot of people think, oh, now you should be conservative.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're going to die in a year, hopefully you're not.
Yeah.
You're gonna probably
I
live to
don't plan
90.
on retiring at 60.
Yeah. So
My wife
you're
tells me
probably,
I'll never retire. Sabina
you
probably
know,
tells
your
you the
wife
same thing,
definitely
right?
doesn't want you to retire for sure. But
And it's
but so
okay
that's
with her as long as we get the house in Maui. So just so you know. Go
and
ahead,
then she'll
though.
be out of there every once in a while if you
Yeah.
get on her, I'm sure. But so to that point, if you retire at 60, yeah,
Mhm.
you need some money in the next 2, 3 years. But what about when you're 75? That's a
Right.
15-year time horizon.
Yeah.
So in that sense, what I like to do
Mhm.
is I like to kind of match those assets up. We do a bucketing approach
Mhm.
that we teach. So your bucket one is your 5-year money. Your bucket
Yeah.
two is your income producing money, your dividend stocks, your real
Mhm.
estate, all those things that you're counting on. And then bucket three is more of your growth names,
Mhm.
your growth stocks. And then bucket four is where we put those alternative investments. So
Gotcha.
10-year time horizon,
Mhm.
we're taking more risk with that. How much goes in that bucket
Mhm.
four? That's where if you're 25, that bucket four is going to be bigger
Yeah.
than if you're
Yeah.
65, right?
Right.
Because you have a longer time horizon. And to that point, what I put in my bucket for, and that's what everyone really wants to know, Rob, what are you doing with your money?
Bucket
What are you
four.
doing with
What
your
is it?
family's
Yeah.
money? I do a lot of private equity.
Cool.
Again, it goes back
I
to being
love
an
private
entrepreneur.
equity. Yeah, I think
I
it's.
love private equity
Mhm.
investments. I've made more
Yeah.
money in terms of the passive investments that I
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
Hands down, private equity's made me the most money. I've made some money in
Cool.
real estate,
Yeah.
whatever. I made some money in public
Mhm.
stocks, but private equity, because John, in 1998, when I got into the market, there was 7,000 publicly traded stocks. Today, there's about 40 something hundred. Why is that? It's because the private markets are so big that you can
Mhm.
raise all the capital you need privately. You don't have to become public. So if you're
And,
not in
and
private
let's face
markets,
it, the
you're
exit isn't going public anymore either. I listen
right,
to
right.
guys say, "Well, we're going to go public." I say, "Bet me."
Yep, yep.
95% of you are going to get bought by a private equity firm or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Cool.
so I like all those things. I'm in art.
Hmm.
I'm not a big car collector. I do have a nice car, but art. I'm looking at NFTs right now. I
Yeah.
personally haven't done anything. Well, I bought the first Dodger NFT, the first public
No
Dodger, which
kidding.
didn't cost
Wow.
$30. I just figured, I guess the first one the Dodgers did. Let me do that. I'm a Dodger
Hmm.
fan,
Cool.
but not in a serious way. But I do think that NFTs are here to stay.
Right.
There's some beautiful NFT galleries that we have a client has one in their homes with,
Hmm.
flat panel televisions with it actually is
Interesting.
beautiful wall art if you're using
Wow.
them.
Uh huh.
But the thing is to realize about NFTs, cryptocurrency, blockchain, which
Hmm.
everybody is really interested in now. A lot of people, I'm in my 40s. When you look at it, we like a little bit more tangible things, and
Hmm.
especially if you get into the baby boomer generation, they
Yeah.
don't understand this at all. But when you look at people like my daughter, who's 13, or the millennials, they've been in terms of gaming, which is a big
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
They've had this since they were born, right? They're
Exactly.
buying digital assets inside of these games, and all. They've been buying digital
Interesting.
assets for 5, 6 years. So the millennial generation is larger than the baby boomer generation, the largest generation in U.S. history.
And
That's where
that's
the
where they're
money is
going.
going. And if that's what they want, then that, again, to your
Yeah.
point, I want to, like Gretzky said, skate to where the puck is going. And
Absolutely.
I go to the areas that people are saying, I don't get it. I'm confused. Well,
Hmm.
great. Because by the
If you
time you
don't
get
get
it,
it, you better start to, or you're going to miss it. That's what
yeah,
I've learned in
exactly.
my life. It's just like the whole internet revolution and even Web 2.0, missing some of the things there and seeing some of my friends do extremely well.
Yeah.
And I was at the leading edge. I mean, I was deep into this stuff and learning and learning where the trends were and what was going to happen. I think the same thing is happening in blockchain. If you
Yeah.
don't know what the database is that blockchain's built on, you may want to know.
Right, 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 right.
If you don't know what the technology is that's going to emerge from this, things like, you and I have talked about escrow services for
Yeah.
transferring real estate,
Right.
asset-backed crypto, I think is going to
Yeah.
be a fascinating area.
Yeah.
I know somebody is thinking about building a solar farm and they're going to back their crypto with the income off of the solar farm. I think, man, this has incredible implications.
Yeah.
It makes me a little nervous from a securities perspective how the United States will want to regulate all this because
Yeah.
anytime there's money flows, somebody wants to come in and tax it and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, yeah, the U.S. government is the greatest disincentivizer of innovation that we have, right? So,
No kidding.
but yeah, to that, yeah, I mean, blockchain is something to where if you're just hearing it for the first time or you haven't done
Right.
any research, you need to start understanding it because not only is it going to be a area for opportunity, but it's also going to be highly disruptive to many traditional industries that are out there right now. That you have to understand. I mean, we're looking right now, me and a couple of my analysts, of we definitely want to create a business on blockchain. Probably, if not, we'll probably do 3 or 4 businesses on blockchain.
Yeah.
But we were just talking today over lunch. We had a client who's having some issues with a contractor, and when does the contractor get paid out versus percentage of completion?
Smart
And we thought,
contracts right
what if you
there.
put a smart contract on the
Exactly.
blockchain that payment was only released when certain milestones were hit?
Mhm.
It just there's blockchain is gonna be tough for
Yeah.
people who don't do business in a great method. It's gonna be tough for attorneys. It's gonna be tough
Yeah.
for third party intermediaries.
No question.
But it's in its infancy, and I don't profess to know everything, if even a
Yeah.
16th about it. But you definitely have to be aware of it and start educating
Yeah.
yourself.
No question. We're even looking at how you can put data on the blockchain that can be, and if you're using the right database, you can encrypt it so that no one else has access to it. So it's
Right,
almost like your own little, data bank. And then how do you monetize that? I think it's just going to
right,
be a fascinating area. In fact, I think one of the most incredible careers that's kind of emerging for those people that want jobs is how do you monetize technology?
yeah,
I
yeah,
never saw Google until I saw AdWords and pay-per-click. Then I went,
right,
brilliant,
right, right, right.
brilliant, And I don't think anybody, necessarily got that until they saw it, and then they went, brilliant. Well, it's
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of brilliance that I think there are a few people out there in the world. I don't know what they call them, chief revenue officer or whatever, but whoever it is that brings monetization to these technologies will make a boatload of money. So,
Yeah, yeah. And,
well,
and
while
the
I
key is
have
like
you, I
simplifying them,
I
right?
know you're helping some blockchain companies, but
Yeah.
who's in the space that you find interesting, whether you're helping them or not? I mean, what are some of the interesting companies out
Yeah, I
there?
mean, some of them I can't talk about,
Okay, all right, fair
unfortunately,
enough.
in India. But
I
what
tried.
yeah, I wish I could. But I would, just I mean, do your research.
Uh-huh.
Look at management. I think the best
Yeah.
thing at this stage is you're really investing in people, right?
Right.
The thing to understand, I think you're bringing up a good point, John. You talked about maybe missing Google, a
Yeah.
few different
Yeah.
things that you kind of missed out on over time. And it's, if I had things to do all over again, even cryptocurrency, I think cryptocurrency was probably the last thing where I said, this is never going to happen to me
Me
again. Like,
too. Me too. All the way. I am not missing this boat.
yeah, because what I was, it's when you're trained in traditional, and now I started out with Waterhouse as a risk manager, right? So
Really
I was a risk analyst.
interesting.
So when you start your career as a risk analyst, you're always worried about how much you can lose, and I
Mhm.
had to really get rid of that. And I just
Yeah.
started thinking, how do I create a framework to where I could still manage risk, but I'm throwing money at things just like Google does on
Hmm.
a daily basis
To
internally
test it.
at businesses that could be these moonshots, to
Hmm.
where they might sound ridiculous now, but they need to give it a chance. But it really comes down to, for me, when you're investing in any early stage
Hmm.
startup, you can't use PE ratios or price to
No.
sales. They don't have any.
Yeah.
You're investing in the
It's
ideas and
multiples
people.
times revenues, I mean, it's
Yeah, so invest in good ideas and people, if possible, that have track records of execution.
Mhm.
Those are the people, or you just hear these people. Like if you heard Zuckerberg talk at an early
Yeah.
stage, you knew this guy knew something, right? You got to
Yeah.
invest. And I like to say it's a little bit more complicated than that, but look, a lot of them are pre-revenue, or a lot of them are
Yeah.
so early stage, or they may never be profitable because their plan is to sell to Google or somebody
Right.
else. But you have to kind of understand that, and you have to take some risk.
Yeah, I remember, and some of them need to sell pretty quick too, because
Yeah,
sometimes we say
yeah,
first
that
offer,
burn
best
rate.
offer. Yeah, I remember a company used to send coupons out. It might have been, rhymed with coupon, might have been Groupon, and they got a $10 billion offer, I think, from Google, and they didn't take it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, can you believe that? And
Oh, God.
and now they're still there, but they never really
Yeah.
realized the value of that. I remember
Yeah.
when Google then went and bought YouTube, and I thought, free video, that'll be interesting. Again, I'll bet I don't look at their 10Ks or their, annual reports, but I'll bet they're making more money off of YouTube than they are AdWords now. That would just be
Oh,
my
for
bet,
sure. Yeah, for sure they
because
are.
the
Yeah.
advertising has just gone crazy. So I think
Well,
you're right. The best valuations, the best monetization is still in front of us, and it's going to all happen in this space. So
yeah, I believe so. Yeah, well, the second most searched search engine is YouTube. It's
yep.
Google then YouTube. So it's
Well,
yeah,
I'll admit this. Whenever my wife needs something fixed, YouTube is my friend. If it's quick, if it's not, then I'll just call a person. So, well, I'm curious. What's the best tax advice you've ever had? I've never asked somebody that's on, in your
wow.
space, but here I am. I'm a CPA and I do a lot of tax advice. I'd be curious. What's the best tax advice you've ever had?
The best tax advice I've had.
How's that for catching you flat-footed, huh?
Wow, yeah, you did. Yeah, I don't know. I'm
I
still looking
stumped
for it.
Rob Luna. Amazing.
I'm still looking for it. That's why I'm talking to you, John. I need to. I mean, I paid more in taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my tax. I paid a lot in taxes, so
Yeah.
I'm still looking for it. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's tough. When it comes back to asset management, it's really where my tax
Yeah.
focus is on. We do a lot of tax loss harvesting. So last year was a great year. Why do I like individual stocks? Because I have full control over the tax basis. Last year was a great time. If you guys remember when we had that big dip, the market was down, it was 30-something%. Even though we
It's time to
closed
buy.
up,
Yeah.
double digits, we were selling stocks in first quarter, locking in losses,
Yeah.
reallocating right away. So even though all of our clients were double digits, myself also, we gave everybody a tax loss with a profitable year. So things like tax loss harvesting, but again, you can't do that with mutual funds. Again, if you're putting 5,000 into account, someone's probably not going to do it for you. That's why it's about education and learning how
Yeah,
to
and
do
I
some of
actually had a client come to us this year who even though they did the tax loss harvesting, they actually bought all the stock back within 30 days. So the wash rules applied. So it was like a busted tax strategy, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the financial advisor had put this
Wow.
individual in that.
Yeah,
shape.
and what I've learned, it's 32 days that you have to wait. I learned that a long
Yeah.
time ago. A lot of people think it's the 31st day. So
Yeah. But it's a challenging area, obviously. And I'm curious, have you looked at some of the self-directed Roth IRA stuff that people are doing? Have you ever thought about doing
Yeah,
some of
I
your private
have.
placement stuff through that kind of a platform?
Yeah, I definitely started looking at it a little bit more, and now I'm trying to. It's escaping me. Is it Thiel who put some of
Yeah,
PayPal into?
he put a lot of money.
Yeah, put
and
a lot of
and I guess
PayPal into.
Congress doesn't like it, but it
Well,
breaks
that's the
my
whole thing,
heart.
right? Is I never talk about beating your taxes. One thing I do
Yeah.
gladly
Yeah.
every year on time is pay my taxes, right?
Yeah.
But the tax code law is out there for a
Yeah.
reason, and so
Right.
if you can take advantage of loopholes, then why? I mean, it's
Yeah.
and the way I look at it, managing other people's money as a
Right.
fiduciary, if I'm not doing that, that's not acting in the best capacity for our clients. So I like it. We're looking at it. It's a little bit grayer
Yeah.
than I like, and so I might actually talk to you about some of that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because I actually love some of the self-directed Roth, especially if you're doing some private equity stuff. I think that's a fun area. So,
Yeah.
well, cool. Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure to just catch up and talk with you about some of this stuff. Anything you want to say before we sign off here? Anything about your Wealth Academy? Why don't you tell people
Yeah,
where to
just
go to find that?
follow me on Instagram at the Luna Rob. My website's robluna.com.
Yeah.
Check out my YouTube channel, free stuff, Wealth Talk every Friday. It's good information, doesn't cost you anything, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience, John.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob. It's good to see you. We'll talk, I'm sure, soon.
Yep.
All
All right,
right.
buddy. We'll see you.
Take
All right,
care.
thanks, man.
See
All
ya.
right, bye.